The following is a Mahabharata narration given by Hridayananda Das Goswami on January 21st, 1989 in Laguna Beach, California.
So Pandu, he used to love to hunt. Now the question you raised, how could a Vedic king hunt? A few things can be said. Number one, as Prabhupada always mentions, they were personally responsible to protect all the citizens. They had to be expert at killing, Prabhupada said, because there were, even like now, there were wicked people. And if even a single innocent person was harmed, they were held responsible. So they had to protect all the citizens. They had to be expert. They weren't fooling around. They had to personally defend any bully, any criminal, any murderer, anyone that came, any foreign country invaded. He had to personally stop them with his own two arms. So, obviously that requires a very powerful person with some passionate energy. It's not just when big, powerful, wicked people come attacking and countries invade. You don't just need some theoretical nice guy. You need someone that actually has got the guts and the strength and the know-how and the spirit to stand up against anyone on the earth and stop them. So, that's the kind of person Pandu was. And also in those days, it wasn't like nowadays, urban blight and the endangered species, problems with the environment. It was actually just the opposite. Actually, there were so many forests, there were so many, what they call it, nature preserves. The whole earth was filled with, teeming with life. So much so the problem wasn't how to preserve the environment. The problem was how to preserve the human beings, how to set aside some land where they could do agriculture. Even deers, for example, those who know agriculture, in a civilization where there are so many forests and deers everywhere, it becomes almost impossible even to farm. So what the fact that kings would go hunting, that is part of the God's arrangement for natural ecological balance. That is part of the formula, that's part of the equation, the way the world's been created. So Pandu, because he was a sportsman, because he was just so powerful, he'd already conquered all the world, there's no one to fight with. So he would hunt, and he got a little carried away with his hunting. He became a little carried away with it, because that happens. So one day he was out hunting, and he saw a deer, and so he was going to shoot that deer with his arrow, and he did. But as he shot the deer with some arrows, suddenly the deer let out a horrible human scream and fell to the ground, saying, "What have you done? You've killed me." So it was shocking, a blood-curdling human scream. So Pandu rushed over there, and it turned out that that deer was just about to mate with its doe, that actually the deer was a powerful Brahmin. It was a powerful Brahmin that had performed so many penances, so many austerities, that he was actually embarrassed to engage in sexual affairs as a Brahmin. He was just, because he'd performed so many austerities, he couldn't really do it, and yet he had to give his wife a child, and he had to do that. So therefore, seeing how spontaneous and romantic the deer in the forest are, because he lived in the forest, he knew all the forest animals very intimately. By his own mystic power, he changed himself into a deer and his wife into a doe, so that without any inhibitions, they could procreate in the forest and enjoy. So they were practically just doing that when Pandu shot both of them. So then the Brahmin said that, you've committed a great offense. You've committed a great sin. And Pandu, of course, was arguing desperately because if it were true that he committed a great sin, his life would be ruined. So he was arguing, no, it's not true. Kings are allowed to hunt, and they're allowed to hunt deer. I guess it's not like nowadays, like a special hunting season, so we don't wipe all the deers out. There were millions and millions and millions. They were all over the place. So Pandu said, no, kings are allowed to do that. It's not against the rules. So the Brahmin said, he said, that may be true, It may be true that kings are allowed to do that, but no one is allowed to kill a man or woman that's engaged in the act of begetting. Because the act of begetting is so sacred that no one can kill another creature, any other creature, who's engaged in that act. So when Pandu heard this, he was thunderstruck because he knew it was true. And he knew that he'd gotten so carried away by his passion for hunting that he'd committed a sin. So at that point the Brahmin cursed him and said that because you've done this to me, just when I was about to satisfy my wife and give her a child, therefore, in the future, when you also become overcome by this desire to beget a child, just at the moment that you become overcome like that, that you'll also be killed like me. And the Brahmin said that and then he died. The Brahmin in the form of a deer. So, when this happened to Pandu, who had conquered the world and everything, he was stunned. Pandu was he was devastated. He was so devastated by all the things that had suddenly happened. And he told his wives and explained everything to his friends, that he just realized, if I live as a king, if I enjoy with my wives, undoubtedly I'll become sexually agitated, because when you have, live very nicely, that's the result. So therefore, he said, I'm finished with this kingly life. Now I'm just going to concentrate on controlling my senses to save, otherwise I'll die anyway. And besides that, I want to take up spiritual life more seriously. He said, it was foolish of me to shoot that deer. Therefore, I want to practice austerities and become a sage, become like the yogis, like the sages, the Brahmins. So, he said, I'm just going to go alone and do that. But then these two women, his two wives, Madri and Kunti, who were completely devoted to him, they're completely devoted, they said, if you go without us, we'll immediately kill ourselves. So he had to take them also. And of course he wanted them to come, he just was afraid to ask them. Because he warned them, he said, no more palaces, no more anything. It's going to be life like the ascetics in the forest. And they said that, yes, that's just what we wanted to do. That's just what we were thinking of doing. So they took off they had the best clothes in the world. They had the most luxurious clothes in the world, the best jewels. They took off everything and gave it away to the Brahmins and gave it away to their relatives. And they all dressed just like mendicants, and they went off to the forest. And Pandu warned them, it's not going to be easy. So they began wandering from one place to another place, living like ascetics in the forest, wandering to different holy places, living with the sages, until finally they came to a place called 100 Peaks. That's what it's in Sanskrit, it's Shadasinga, which means 100 peaks, like they have 1,000 oaks in California. So this place is called 100 Peaks. So they stopped in 100 Peaks, and Pandu, he said that Pandu was such a great personality that higher beings like Charanas and Siddhas from higher planets, they were personally protecting him. Wherever he went in the forest, they were just following him, protecting him, these higher beings. So that same determination, that same enthusiasm and power with which he had conquered the world, now he put all of it into his practice of yoga and austerities. And so he became a great sage. Just like he had conquered the world, now he was conquering the senses. In fact, in the ashram at 100 Peaks, all the senior old sages and Brahmins were already perfect masters. They liked him so much. They all became very fond of him. He was so nice, and he was just such a great person. So he became like their son. And they would personally take care of him and dote on him. He was like the favorite of everyone. So he also, some people there were like his brothers, some people were like his friends. He was just the greatest person. Everyone loved him. Everyone was giving him so much attention. So anyway, one day he saw that all the sages, the older sages whom he followed and served, they were packing up, getting ready to leave. So he said, "My dear sages, where are you all going?" So they said, "Oh, didn't you hear? There's going to be a there's going to be a big get-together on Brahmaloka, Brahma's planet. All the great demigods and sages, anyone who's anyone is going to be there, and we're going. So Pandu jumped up and said, "Yeah, I'm going too." So he said, "Oh, I'm sorry, but you can't come because it's a very difficult journey. You have to have all kinds of mystic power to even get there." And he explained that they're passing through frozen wastelands where even birds and animals can't cross. What to speak of human beings? Only the perfect sages, perfect mystics, and higher beings can cross there. So he explained, he said, maybe you could get across, but your wives won't make it. He said, these are the daughters of kings. They can't live like that. They won't make it. So Pandu said, all right, because he was submissive. But then he blurted out, he said, but I've got to tell you what my real frustration is, because somehow it came out. My real frustration is that I can't have a child. I performed all these austerities. He said, I've conquered the world, so that's all finished now. Now because he had actually mastered the yoga system and mastered all these austerities, he said, now there's nothing more for me to do in life. And my real desire was to have a son, because having a child, raising a good religious child for a householder is necessary in order to get all these pious benefits. As he said, my life won't be complete unless I can raise a religious son. And so if I can't do that, then I might as well die now, because there's nothing more to do. There's nothing to do anymore. My only real desire is just to raise a son. So the sages saw that he was very discouraged about this, and of course he was like their own child. So they told him, look, by our mystic power we can see, we have spiritual vision, that actually you will have very exalted children. It's already ordained by providence, so just do the needful. And they left. He said, do the needful? What does... So he was thinking, so then he called Kunti to a private place. First, in the front of all the senior Brahmins, he started preaching how important it is to have a child, looking at Kunti. So then he called Kunti to a private place, and he said, you know my position, I've been cursed. I can't have a child. I can't personally beget a child. But I have to have a son somehow or other. I have to have a religious son. Therefore, he said, there's a lot of evidence in the scriptures that in times of emergency, when there is great difficulty, that a woman can have a child with a superior man. In other words, they were Kshatriya class, so she could have a child with a Brahmin. In times of emergency, when the husband is dead, or the husband is incapacitated, and the woman needs to have a child, there was this rule that she could have with a man of a higher position. So he said, he gave all kinds of evidence from scriptures, told stories, and the conclusion was, so you should approach a Brahmin and have a child. He gave the example, I forget the name of the king, who couldn't have a child, so his wife, at the right time of the month, bathed herself very nicely, prepared herself, and went out into the crossroads where the roads met until she found a perfect self-realized Brahmin and had 3 children with him. They all became great kings. He said, that's what you have to do. And Kunti was shocked. Kunti said that, he said, I will never approach another man, even with my mind. So I will never approach another man. He said, you tell me to find someone who's equal to you or greater than you. She said, but there's no one on the earth like that. There's no one on the earth that's equal to you or greater than you. No one's like you. So she said, you yourself can beget children with me. And you yourself will. And then she told her story about a man, even though when he had passed away, a great king had passed away, his wife was so attached to him, because this king and his wife, even though it was an arranged marriage, had fallen so much in love with each other that actually he'd indulged so much in sex, that's what killed him. He got sick from it, even though he's the greatest king. But the wife was so attached to him that she was just clinging to his body, and she was crying to him, even though he's gone, crying in so many ways and swearing her loyalty to him. Until finally, he had already gone to a higher position. His voice came back and said that, because she was so much attached to him, she was begging. for him to give her a child, that actually, even in his dead body, he empowered his own dead body, and she had a child by him. So Kunti told that story to counteract Pandu's story. Anyway, so they're having this argument back and forth where Kunti is resisting like anything. And Pandu is insisting, no, you've got to do the needful and have a child. So finally, when Kunti sees, because Pandu was so, when he was determined about something, no one could stand in his way. So when she saw he's just so determined, then she finally revealed what she'd never told anyone in the whole world. And that is what no one ever could imagine, that before she had married Pandu, she had had a child. And of course, that's a story. One time, she was the daughter of Kunti Bhoja. And actually, she was the daughter of, anyway, that's another story. But she was raised by Kunti Bhoja, who was actually her, uncle. But anyway, one time Durvasa Muni came there, and everyone knew Durvasa Muni was very hard to please, very temperamental, bad temper, like a hostess's nightmare. So Kunti Bhoja, because he was so anxious for his daughter to grow up to be religious, whenever great sages or respectful people came, he would engage her in her serving them and also worshiping the deity. So even though Durvasa was so notorious, she made such an effort, she did everything to please him. And he finally got pleased. He thought, this girl is so nice, young girl, she's so nice. And he could see by his own power that in the future she would have all kinds of troubles. So he gave her this. He couldn't tell her what her troubles would be because she was a young girl, it would just cause her so much disturbance. So he just gave her a power. So you take this mantra, this technique, you can call any demigod in the world, he'll come and give you a child. So she was just she was a young girl, curious. She wanted to see how it works and everything, sort of fooling around with it. So just out of curiosity, she called the sun, and suddenly the radiant, effulgent sun himself just came down and said, "You've called me." She said, I think it was the wrong number. She said, no, it's just, I just got this, she was just this is a young girl. She said, no, it's just that Durvasa gave me this and I just want to see how it worked, but you can go back now. He said, no, you can't call the sun and tell him to go back. What do you think I am? What kind of son? God. So, anyway, he promised her that you just cooperate with me, I'll make you a virgin again. They can do things like that. So there was just nothing she could do. So then suddenly he gave her a child. So that child, who was so powerful, of course, became Karna. So no one knew this because she was so, even though he was Karna was born from the sun god, even though she was innocent, even though she became a virgin again, she was such a chaste, just innocent girl, but brought up so strictly, she couldn't emotionally deal with the situation that without being married she had a child. She just couldn't, it was just too much for her. And so she just couldn't handle it. She's just a young girl. So she just took the baby and carefully put it in a basket and sent it down the river. And of course it was picked up by a husband of a lady named Radha. Anyway. So no one in the world knew that. Only the sun god knew it. Only the sun god in the whole earth. Only the sun god. The sun god's not from the earth. So that means in the whole earth, no one knew this. So finally, when she saw that Pandu wouldn't take no for an answer, she told him, I have to confess that when I was a young girl, she told him the whole story, that actually that happened. And I still have that power. So if you're actually going to do this to me, you're going to force me to have children, then I thought I should inform you that I can call any of the gods. So when Pandu heard this, he thought, boy, this is tremendous. Because he wanted to have fine children. He thought, I can have children of the gods. So he said, well, the most important thing is to have a Krishna-conscious son. So therefore, we want the son to be devoted to Dharma, to religious principles, so call Dharmaraj, call Dharma himself. the Lord of Justice, the justice minister for the universe, who's of course Yamaraj. So they called Yamaraj, Dharma himself, and he gave her a child who he was the most religious of all the Pandavas, Yudhishthira Maharaj. Then Pandu next thought, well, we have the most religious son in the world, but we also every father wants a son who's super powerful. So call Vayu, call the wind god, who's the most powerful. So she did. And then Bhima was born, the most powerful man in the world. Then Pandu was becoming almost intoxicated by it, because naturally a father wants to have good children. So by begetting these beautiful sons, he was becoming completely overwhelmed. So he said, now, let's call the chief of all the gods Indra. And let's get a great personality as a son. So she did that, and then Arjuna was born. So then he said, now let's call, she said, wait a second. Then she said, what do you want to do? Or do you want to make a prostitute out of me? Do you want to call every god in the sky? Every god in heaven? So at that point she said, I did this for you. You have the sons you wanted. Now it's finished. Don't ask me to call anyone. So then Madri came, and she told Pandu that, Pandu said, why are you so depressed? Well, why am I so depressed? Because now Kunti's given you so many children, I've given you nothing. So now my position is nothing. So they had a little istagosti. And Pandu asked Kunti, well, can you call someone for Madri? So anyway, they looked up in the contract, and they found that technically, they could do that. Somehow or other they found a way to do that. So then she called the Ashwini Kumaras, for the heavenly physicians, and who were especially handsome, and they're the ones who made Chaivana Muni very beautiful and handsome. So you're in the beauty business, isn't it? Yeah. But actually, the Ashwini Kumaras, they have great powers beyond what we can imagine. So they called the Ashwini Kumaras, and then Nakula and Sahadev were born twins, and they were the most handsome of all the brothers. They were the most handsome. So anyway, then they were just living out in the forest together. Pandu, he very much loved his children, and they were very attached to their father. Because according to Vedic law, even though they've been begotten by proxy, so to speak, they were actually children of Pandu by Vedic law. And they understood they were actually children of Pandu. So they were all living in the forest, the 5 young boys, and the father with great pleasure was teaching them everything and raising them. And so one day, though, the curse came to fruition. Even though Pandu had mastered the yoga system, had become so powerful. I'll finish with this story. Anyway, one day the curse actually took effect. And Pandu, for so many years, had controlled himself perfectly. One day, he's out in the forest, and Madri was there. We can hardly imagine how gorgeous these women were. They were inconceivably beautiful. So because they were living out in the forest, and it was very simple, not primitive, but very simple, rustic life. They were just they become forest dwellers. So she wasn't dressed so, they didn't care so much about dressing, and she wasn't covered so well. Although she was a very, very beautiful woman. So one day, suddenly, because of the curse, Pandu became completely overwhelmed by lust, by sex desire. And then when he saw Madri, who was not covered very well, he became completely inflamed. So he went after her. And of course she saw him coming. Women understand these things. And so when she saw him coming, she understood that he's going to kill himself. And so, of course, for her, Pandu was everything. So when she saw him, he's going to kill himself like this, she panicked. And she became practically hysterical, and she started screaming. She started screaming at the top of her lungs for help, crying out for help, crying out for Kunti, help, help. She was screaming like this. And she began to run through the forest trying to get away. But of course, how could this woman get away from Pandu? So she was screaming. Everyone heard these cries. Like they were just like It would just make their hearts stop, these cries. So everyone came running. The little young boys, the Pandavas, they came running. Kunti, everyone, the Brahmins, everyone came running. Meanwhile, Pandu had caught up with Madri. And then just as the curse had said, just when he grabbed her to embrace her, he suddenly died. So then, just at that time, Madri heard that everyone was arriving, so she went out. She stopped everyone and said that she told Kunti, don't let the children come any farther, because they couldn't see what had happened. So then Kunti made the children stop. Everyone had to stay back. And then she went and saw everything. Anyway, the next time I'll tell the rest of the story.
Right. When are you going to... What about Tuesday night?
Tuesday? We'll negotiate. I hate to leave on a sorrowful note. But anyway, Pandu, of course, went eventually back to home, back to Godhead. And anyway, what happened after that? With the Pandavas? Anyway, that's another story. So we'll stop here. All glory to the Prabhupada.
The following is a class on Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 3, Text 44, given by Hridayananda Das Goswami on January 14th, 1989, in Los Angeles, California.
Etadvam darshitam rupam prabjanma smaranaya me nanyadhamat bhavam jnanam martyalingena jayate. So see the Prabhupada's translation and purport for this verse. Etad, this form of Vishnu, Vam, unto both of you, Darshitam, has been shown, Rupa, my form as the Supreme Personality of Godhead with 4 hands. Prabjanma, of my previous appearances, Smaranaya, just to remind you, may, my, not anyadha, otherwise, not bhava, Vishnu's appearance, jnana, this transcendental knowledge, martilingena, by taking birth like a human child, jayate, does arise. Translation, please repeat. I have shown you this form of Vishnu. Just to remind you of my previous births. Otherwise, if I appeared like an ordinary human child, you would not believe that the Supreme Personality of Godhead Vishnu has indeed appeared. I have shown you this form of Vishnu just to remind you of my previous births. Otherwise, if I appeared like an ordinary human child, you would not believe that the Supreme Personality of Godhead Vishnu has indeed appeared. Now, Srila Prabhupada's purport. Devaki did not need to be reminded that the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Vishnu, had appeared as her son. She already accepted this. Nonetheless, she was anxious, thinking that if her neighbors heard that Vishnu had appeared as her son, none of them would believe it. Therefore, she wanted Lord Vishnu to transform himself into a human child. On the other hand, the Supreme Lord was also anxious, thinking that if he appeared as an ordinary child, she would not believe that Lord Vishnu had appeared. Such are the dealings between devotees and the Lord. The Lord deals with his devotees exactly like a human being, but this does not mean that the Lord is one of the human beings, for this is the conclusion of non-devotees. Devotees know the Supreme Personality of Godhead under any circumstances. This is the difference between a devotee and a non-devotee. The Lord says, Manmana bhavamad bhaktamad dhyaji mam namasturu. Engage your mind always in thinking of me, become my devotee. Offer obeisances and worship me. A non-devotee cannot believe that simply by thinking of one person, one can achieve liberation from this material world and go back to Godhead. But this is a fact. The Lord comes as a human being, and if one becomes attached to the Lord in the platform of loving service, one's promotion to the transcendental world is assured. So, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. This is an old saying. In Spanish, al país que fueres haz lo que vieres, isn't it? So, Lord Krishna also follows this principle. Even though he is the supreme God, when he comes to the material world, he takes up the local style. Prabhupada says that he comes as a human being, and he follows many of the customs of human society. Of course, not all of them, because after all, he is God. But he makes a nice gesture toward the human beings, and he lives among them. This is Krishna. Just like, for example, the father may see the little children playing, so the father goes to the children, oh, you're playing? All right, I'll play with you. Isn't it? Just like the child may be moving his little toy soldiers on the ground, so the father also moves one of them. For a minute, just I've seen Naikatma. When his daughter's coloring in the book, he also colors. Isn't it? So, that's natural. The father, mother participates a little with the child. This natural relationship. So in the same way, Lord Krishna is not only God, but He is also our Father. As He Himself clearly says in the Bhagavad Gita, Pitamamasya Jagata. So He comes and for a few minutes He colors in our coloring book with us. He acts like a human being, and He acts like a king, and so on and so forth. So, Lord Krishna is so kind that He comes down like this, He plays a little with His children, then He goes back to His abode. Of course, He invites them that don't stay down here, this is not a nice place, this is a nasty place. It's booby trapped. Lord Krishna clearly says that. Just like, for example, let's say you're in a house, you're in your house and the father comes in and says, you better go to somewhere else today because we're fumigating the house. So the father comes and tells you we're fumigating the house, but still you want to stay in the house and get fumigated. That's your decision. So in the same way, Lord Krishna clearly explains that this material world is full of bugs. Literally, people in this world are trying to enjoy with no higher understanding, like bugs. So then Krishna, material nature, comes and fumigates it, or drives away all these non-devotees. So Lord Krishna clearly, He gives this warning, He gives this information, that don't stay here. Don't try to be happy here. You can't be happy here. For example, a father may come and see a little child pulling on some fixture on the wall, trying to pull it off. The father says, you can't pull it off, it's nailed in. But the little child still keeps trying to pull it. So in the same way, Lord Krishna comes here and clearly tells us, you can't enjoy this world. It's made in such a way that you'll never be happy here. Dukhali amasasata. Lord Krishna clearly says that. Still, in our childish brain, infantile brain, we keep pulling. No, I'm going to pull it off. I'm going to do it. I'm going to be happy. So this is our foolishness. This is our foolishness. Just like with junk food, it looks nice, but there's no nutrition. It's all superficial. In the same way, material happiness is like junk food. There's no actual nutrition. There's no actual happiness. In fact, there's birth and death, old age and disease. We're all here in transit. No one is a permanent resident. Just like you go to a foreign country, they give you a temporary visa. Sometimes I remember when I went to Guyana, previously the government was a little nasty, so they used to give 24-hour visas. And you had to really do a lot of talking to get one of those. Who are you? What do you want? Why did you come? When are you leaving? Very nice. So, Prabhupada said, like barking dog. Anyway, we go to a foreign country, we get a visa, we stay for some time, but we don't stay there permanently. We have our own home. Isn't it? Just like you have your home, you live somewhere. So if you travel somewhere else, you're not planning to stay there. You don't make permanent arrangements. So in the same way, any intelligent person, what to speak of intelligent, any sane person, can understand that we are not staying here. No one gets a permanent visa here. No one is going to stay. So when you're visiting somewhere, just like you go to a friend's house, when you go there, you don't start making all kinds of arrangements because you're leaving. So all of us are going to leave this world. Our so-called friends and relatives, family, investments, all these things we're doing on the lam, or we're doing on the run. We're just passing through, that's all. We're just passing through. We're not staying. So, sometimes when you're driving on the freeway, you stop at a little town for gas or to rest or to get something to eat, and you may walk around a little town and see it, but then you're passing through. So this simple fact people can understand. This so-called advanced society, so-called advanced in knowledge, so many universities, but even the simple, obvious, self-evident, irrefutable fact that we're all going to die, they haven't figured out yet. They see it, but they don't see it. You can say, well, if we haven't figured it out, why do we have mortuaries? Why do we have cemeteries? Why do we, we know these things. Why do we have hospitals? We're prepared. But therefore the Bhagavatam says, Pasyanapi. Even though they see it, napasiti, they don't see it. They see it, but they don't see it. This is the Bhagavatam statement. And we can actually observe that. On the one hand, there are so many arrangements for death and so on. But on the other hand, we live as if we're not going to die. So this is the irony, or this is the irony of material life. This is called the mode of passion. In the mode of passion, there's some knowledge and some ignorance. Lord Krishna describes that when one is in the mode of passion, oyathavat prajanati sarudhi vidhi rajasi. When intelligence is in the mode of passion, we see things oyathavat, not exactly as they are. We see something right, something wrong. And in the mode of goodness, we see things correctly. And in the mode of ignorance, everything is wrong. Sarvarthan viparitam. Everything is backwards. Everything is wrong. This is the mode of ignorance. And the mode of passion, pasyanapi na pasyati. This we have some understanding, and also there's a great deal of ignorance. So our society, the society around us, is not very advanced because even their own mortality they don't seriously consider. There's no serious preparation. Rather, they want to fight it materially. They want to fight it. It's like a person drowning in the ocean, flailing his arms and legs. The lifeguard comes and he just, no, I'm going to save myself. And then he just goes down, bubble, bubble, bubble. So, it's exactly in that way. We approach people, become Krishna conscious, try to understand Krishna. No, I'll save myself. We just opened up the new heart clinic. We just opened up the new, the heart clinic or the brain clinic or the cancer clinic or whatever. No thanks, we'll save ourselves. But who is saving himself? Has anyone in the history of science saved himself? Has a single person saved himself? So, no, he surrendered to God and God saved him. Yeah. No, eu estava dizendo que ninguém sem Deus se salvou. Eu estou dizendo que uma pessoa que não aceitou Deus, que quis fazer tudo ele mesmo, sem Deus. Ninguém se salvou. Entendeu? He brought the example of Christ. Christ is the opposite example, that he surrendered to God. Surrendered to God. But by science, by our own efforts, no one has saved himself. So, anyway, so the society is not so advanced. They don't understand these simple things. The simple things you don't understand. Anyway, here it's explained. 44. Etad vam darsitam rupam prag janma smaranaya me. Lord Krishna says to Devaki that I showed both of you my form, just to remind you, my form of Vishnu, to remind you of your old relationship with me. Prag janma smaranaya. Prag means previous, former. So to remind you of my former birth. Similarly, Lord Krishna told Arjuna, Bahuni me vyatitani janmani tavacharjuna. That many, many births both you and I have passed. Bahuni me vyatitani janmani tavacharjuna. Tani ham veda sarvani. I know all of them. Not tam veda parantava. You don't know. Because you're acting as the conditioned soul. Therefore you don't know. But I know. So, here Lord Krishna says to Devaki and Vasudeva, you don't remember. But I'm reminding you that just as now I'm taking birth as your child, so in the past I also did this. It's very interesting, Vasudeva and Devaki previously appeared as not only Sutapa and Krishna, but also Aditi and Kashyapa. Kashyapa and Aditi are actually Vasudeva and Devaki. When Aditi was very disturbed because Bali Maharaj stole all the real estate of her children, all their houses and everything, took away their positions. So Aditi was very unhappy and she prayed for the Lord. Of course, understanding that Aditi is actually Devaki, we can understand that she was not simply concerned to get back her children's political position, but actually she took advantage of that situation to get the Lord as her son. And then the Lord appeared as Vamana. Anyway, here Lord Krishna tells them, Namya dhamma bhavam jnanam marjalingena jayate. If instead of appearing as the Almighty God, Vishnu, if instead I had appeared Maratya Lingena, as a mortal, Maratya of course just means mortal. If I had appeared as an ordinary human being, then you would not have understood that actually God had appeared. Namya dhamma bhavam jnanam arjalingena jayate. You would not have understood that. So, this is the verse here. Prabhupada says that the non-devotees can't understand, but the devotees can understand, because the devotees obey Krishna. And Krishna reciprocates and gives them knowledge. Similarly, Lord Krishna says, Tesham sadata jutanam vajatam priti purvakam. To those who are always engaged, worshipping me with love and devotion, tadami udiyogam tam dinavam vajanti te. I give them the knowledge by which they can come to me. So here is an example of how Lord Krishna gives the knowledge. Here's an example of how Lord Krishna gives the knowledge. He can give it within the heart. Nasyami atma bhavastu jnanadipena vasa. He can give it by within the heart, or he can make some arrangement. He can appear externally also and give that knowledge. But this way or that way, Lord Krishna will enlighten his devotees. That's the point. So any questions on these points? Avajanan dimam uda. Vijananti means they belittle, deride. Pramudha deride me because I appear in human-like form.
The other day you were explaining about the duality and the variety. It's supposed to be a question asked by when you talk about I would like you to clarify a bit on this variety and the duality in the sense that people talk about duality. Is it regarding the individual perception of the thing? So there are two energies of the Lord, inferior which is not conscious, and superior energy is being conscious.
There is obviously heat and cold in this world. There is victory and defeat. It's not that we just imagine there are such things. They actually exist. But the point is, neither the heat nor the cold nor the victory or the defeat and so on ultimately are important to the soul in a higher sense. That's the point. Therefore, Lord Krishna says, Matra sparsastu konteya sitoshna sukadukada agama bhayo nityastam siticha savarata. The temporary appearance of heat and cold or happiness and distress arise from sense perception, and they're temporary, they come and go, Krishna says, agama payina, they come and go. So tolerate them. Krishna doesn't say there is no such thing. He says they're temporary and they're not related to the soul, therefore tolerate them.
Toleration comes different days of life and rise and sort of the discussion in relation to this duality, to get out of this duality and just because there is no two things as such, so just everything is one.
And different. Krishna says there are varieties, but we should tolerate them because they're temporary. That's Krishna's statement. Yes?
How do we know that we're eating God with this heart like Krishna? Can this be equated to some type of intuition or?
Yes, we have Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. So, the devotee is supposed to be intelligent, just like practically in our movement. We have so many books. Prabhupada said you can read these books. There are so many engagements. There are different devotees. We should cooperate with them. In other words, these things don't come up for the first time now. If you read Prabhupada's letters or room conversations, sure there is holding one. If you read these things, Prabhupada constantly dealt with this. So, we should get to know Prabhupada. We should actually be a little intelligent. We should read these things. We shouldn't waste our time reading so many other things. And then if we actually understand Prabhupada, we'll see practically, just like Prabhupada would say, cooperate. If you live in a particular place and things are going on reasonably, properly, then cooperate. So, in so many different ways, it's not impossible to find out how to please Krishna. We also, Rupa Goswami, Nupade Swami talks about taking guidance from senior Vaishnavas. In fact, I think it was Tamal Krishna Goswami explained in his class perhaps, that the symptom of a Kanishta Adhikari, the word Kanishta means lowest, the lowest in Sanskrit, that's what it means. So the symptom of the third class devotee is that he doesn't know the art of association. We should learn how to associate. If someone thinks that, well, no one's better than me, so there's no one to take instructions from. If we're very proud like this, then it's difficult. Or no one is even equal to me, so I have no one to be friends with. Everyone's actually less than me, but the fools aren't listening. So I guess I'll go back to my mother's house. So we actually have to learn how to associate with devotees. We have to learn how to be a good friend to devotees who are more or less like ourselves. We have to learn how to be a good servant to devotees who are more advanced than us. And we have to learn how to be a good teacher for devotees that need our guidance. Yes.
While we are chanting, Maharaj, it said that you are directly personally serving Krishna and asking his service. Because we are in a body and in order to, because we have various plans, even in physical service now or somehow in a material world we have. So even when one is chanting, the mind sometimes gets preoccupied in other activities and the real purpose of Krishna.
Prabhupada said we should chant in here. 7 Kirtana.
That is true, but the mind is preoccupied sometimes in different ways.
Well, the mind is supposed to be trained to hear Krishna's name.
And for that we see the association of devotees, but even with association sometimes the mind is preoccupied. So
Anyway, it's we have to learn how to control the mind. You have to practice, that's all. You have to practice chanting Hare Krishna and hearing. Simple. Yes. Yes. Sususho, one who desires to hear, one who wants to serve, one who has faith, that by serving senior Vaishnavas, we get this taste for hearing. By serving. Actually, this is a fact that, isn't it, that when we actually work very hard for Krishna, then there's some taste for chanting and hearing. Yeah, we actually experience this. That if we actually are serving very faithfully and nicely, then also we relish very much hearing about Krishna.
Well, when the mind sometimes drifts into Shastra and
Anyway, Prabhupada said we should chant and hear Krishna's name, so go for it. So all glories to Srila Prabhupada.
The following is an excerpt from a darshan with Hridayananda Das Goswami on December 30th, 1988 in Laguna Beach, California.
Actually, it's so long that rather than read the whole thing through, so we're working the Sanskrit edition. So just I'm just sort of doing it as it comes.
That's not that was
Ramayana.
No, that's not the Ramayana.
just as you separated me at the time that your son
That's
goes away.
right.
You also got
That's right. That's how he got kissed.
That's a. How do you like it, Putama?
I think it's really a significant piece of literature, like you said.
Oh yeah.
It just attracts the mind so readily. It's like prasadam. It's easy for everyone. You don't have to really be particularly inclined. It just attracts the mind.
Prabhupada says that the Mahabharata is supposed to be it's a Shudra.
No, Sudra, Vaishya, businessmen, workers, women. Is there anything else? Is there anyone else around? Prabhupada says that, I have a quote from Prabhupada, I don't have it right here, but I just typed it out in fact in another letter. Prabhupada says that by hearing the Mahabharata one can become a pure devotee, gradually. He says that Krishna is present in it. Of course, the Bhagavad Gita is present in it. But he says that it contains Krishna's activities, and that by hearing it one can become a pure devotee eventually.
didn't Prabhupada say that because somebody had the idea of making some of these sequences into movies or something, and Prabhupada said that if they don't do it right, then everybody will think that Krishna is just an ordinary.
Therefore, it has to be done in Prabhupada's time. That's the whole point.
But it can be done. Because that'd be the ultimate
Prabhupada said it has to be done properly.
movie.
It is the ultimate movie. Can't you just see like Pandu coming home and the whole earth covered with the multitudes of people? And the music,
The ultimate action hero adventures.
Planet.
It'll put Arnold Schwarzenegger to shame.
That's all these people. The point is, now people are simply going through the rubbish of this crow literature. Isn't it? Prabhupada, Prabhupada talks a lot about this. These are the real stories. Everyone has that realization, isn't it? These are the real stories. These are the real people.
Also seems to really firmly establish the higher principles of life as well. It just seems almost to really inspire you in the sense of those principles. That you don't, so much of the television and things, movies and books nowadays, they bring out baser qualities in people by their contact with them. These really inspire people in the higher principles. How to deal with one another, beauty, environment, all these things. They're so under assault now.
And especially gives a really wonderful glimpse of Vedic culture. Yes. Something in human media.
Pandu. Yeah, Pandu is, as I was working on it, I thought he's the real celebrity. I mean, he was... Oh, that doesn't it does.
Oh, we got a call for him earlier.
Serious phone call.
They track you down already.
Go on in. The spy that came in from the cold.
I'm on our side, Mark.
So, just discussing about verse. Yeah, Pandu was such a celebrity. After he'd done all this, he went around touring and actually making personal appearances, meeting the people, and they were thrilled. It's mentioned that many times in Mahabharata, Prahishta, and people were just thrilled. They were thrilled to see him.
He was a great hero.
Yes, an actual hero. Also that description of how the earth became so nice when the three princes were born. All the symptoms of it. People were cooperating. Everywhere, people. Huh?
Spirit of Christmas, giving gifts.
Yeah. Yeah, there's an effect. But the life was always like that, not just for a few days. Diyatam. Charity being given everywhere.
Come here and eat.
Now you see a sign that says, keep out. Imagine it? Yeah.
This means you. Keep out, this means you.
I'm the response.
Harm response.
Couldn't believe it.
Everybody sniffing.
Well, there's so many roads though, because there's no one to curb the roads.
And then that's the amazing thing of Mahabharata. There's stories, fascinating stories going on, thrilling. Then in the middle, suddenly Krishna is there. Suddenly Krishna appears. Supreme Personality of Godhead.
There's also, considered they're part of the Bhagavatam there because the story of Bhishma.
Oh, yeah, the whole first canto. Yeah, after, it's interesting, Narada comes and tells Vyasadeva to speak directly about Krishna, explain Krishna's activities. So then from that point, the rest of the first canto is all Mahabharata story. They're all about those people, the rest of the first canto. Narada finishes, and he leaves at the end of the 6th chapter of the first canto. And then in the 7th chapter, Vyasa goes into his meditation, he sees Krishna. He sees the illusory energy standing behind her. And then immediately, Yada Mridhi Kodava Sinjayanam Vireshvato Viragatangateshu, that he goes right to the battlefield when Duryodhana's spine is broken. And the rest of the canto is just all the aftermath. And also other stories, Krishna coming to Dwarka, leaving Hastinapur, and so on.
Yeah, but it's like where Krishna intersects with Mahabharata, that's Bhagavatam.
Yeah.
Bhishma taking the lead.
Yeah.
The most dramatic scene.
Yeah. It's interesting from your perspective. It says that in
Krishna.
what? What's it?
He is correcting me. I said that Bhishma took the wheel.
Yeah, Bhishma.
No, Krishna.
Oh, Krishna took the wheel. Yeah, Krishna. It said that the Kurus, I think the southern Kurus, they would mingle freely with higher beings. That was mentioned. Like Charanas.
Where is that book? What section?
You just read that? That's yeah. Just after the Dhritarashtra, Pandu, and Vidura were born, said the southern Kurus that they would mingle freely with the Charanas and other higher beings. Yeah.